afternoon and welcome. Thanks for joining us today for our new knowledge session. My name is Sandy Ratliff. I'm with Virginia Community Capital. If you're not familiar with us, we are a community development financial institution focused on three areas. That is investing, financing, and community innovation services. We are happy to partner with the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, and the town of Abington to present these sessions on a bi-weekly basis. This program has been going since 2014 to support the Washington County Business Challenge, and we do record these sessions for training and educational purposes. And wanted to let everybody know that we have a big archive of workshops over the years, probably close to 150 that you have available on demand. Just go to our YouTube channel at New Knowledge, and you can find those there, or they're also listed on the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator's Facebook page. So you have all kinds of opportunities to, if you missed a session, to learn something other. How do you market your business? We've done a number of sessions, so you pretty much anything that you want is available up there. Now, before we get started and I turn it over to my co-host today, just want to let everybody know that to keep this workshop flowing, we are going to mute everybody. However, we do want to hear from you, and I know our presenter does. So if you have a question during the session and especially afterwards, please post those in the Q&A section, and we will address those. Our presenter is happy to have those at any time just to keep the webinar flowing and to answer any questions that you may have. Now I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Kathy Lowe. She's the Executive Director of the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, who will introduce our presenter and moderate. Kathy, it's all yours. Thank you.
Well, since this is session 3, I won't go on and on again because everybody knows now who Danny Ruble is and how much we rely on him to help us out from time to time. And Danny, I have a question. Can you see the chat or the Q&A without me interrupting, or you can? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you all will put your questions in either the Q&A or the chat, Danny can see it and he'll answer it as he feels comfortable, ending one sentence and starting another one. The other thing I want to say, and I don't know if this lady's on, but I had a lady call yesterday about the QuickBooks sessions, and she wanted to know when we were going to do another round of QuickBooks sessions because she missed the first 2. The answer to that question is it's on our New Knowledge YouTube channel if this lady is online. And so you can see session 1 and 2 on our New Knowledge YouTube channel or on Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator Facebook page. So without further ado, our friend Danny Ruble.
Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good day so far. I am going to share my screen and we're going to pick up with the client file that we've been using in the past, which is Craig's Design and Landscaping Services. It's a sample client that we have available to us. I know last week or our last session, we discussed invoices and accounts receivable and how to collect money. And so the main focus of today's session is going to be how to record expenses and how to spend money. Hopefully you're collecting more than you're spending. As I was thinking about our last session, I realized that one of the items that I forgot to cover in regards to accounts receivable is the accounts receivable aging report. And under favorites, they have the report starred, so it's up here as our favorites. Any kind of report that you want to use that's available to you, you can simply check the star to turn it green, and it will automatically show up here in your favorites. So the accounts receivable aging summary, it's a pretty good report that shows you who your customers are and how much is outstanding and how long those invoices have been outstanding. And so that's a report that I failed to go over during our last session. And as is common with a lot of QuickBooks reports, you can customize the report to for a variety of dates and other customizations, such as gives you the ability to filter if you want to look at just specific customers, or if you want to look at everybody. The main, as I said, the main focus of today is going to be expenses and vendors and how we pay bills. Similar to the accounts receivable aging summary, if we scroll down to the section about who you owe, there's also an accounts payable aging summary, and I'm just going to put a star there so that shows up in our favorites. And the accounts payable aging summary is very similar to the payables. This shows us a list of who we owe, how much we owe, and how long our bills have been outstanding within certain date ranges. So those are two reports that I wanted to go over with you fairly briefly. Again, I apologize for not hitting the AR aging summary during our last session. So as I said, the main purpose of today's session is to go over how to spend money. And before we can spend money, we need to get our setup correct. And so if we scroll over here on the left-hand side of our QuickBooks toolbar, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about vendors. And the vendor section is pretty important. And in fact, it may be a little more important than tracking revenue by customer, because with vendors, it can be kind of easy to create multiple vendors for the same customer, for the same vendor. So, for example, if you get in a rush, you may have Appalachian Power, you may have American Electric Power, you may have AEP, you could have APCO, and so you could write checks to all four. And at the end of the year, or anytime you run reports, you may look into your general ledger, and it may look like you've paid four separate companies as opposed to having one company. And so trying to keep your vendor list accurate and organized is very important. Similar to creating customers and creating vendors, on the right-hand side, we just click the new vendor. We can put the name of the company in, and then it gives you the opportunity to how you want that company name to display. It can be a variety of options, and it just depends on how you want that to display when you're looking at reports. A little further down, the usual suspects. You've got emails, phone numbers. This next section right here is how do you want the name to print on the checks? Oftentimes companies have a DBA, or a doing business as. So you may have the company name, the company legal name entered as the contact, but you may want the name that the check goes to be something different. And this is where you would put that. Address, any kind of notes or attachments that you want to enter right now. The next section is probably one of the most important, if not and probably one of the most overlooked sections of QuickBooks Online, and that is the ability to track expenses for 1099 purposes. A best practice in general is to request what we call a Form W-9 from any potential vendors. And it's a lot easier to get that up front before you send them a check, as opposed to after you've sent them the check, because they know when you contact them at the end of the year, they know that you're contemplating sending a 1099, and it may be a little more difficult to get that information from them. But right here under taxes is what you would want to enter their tax ID number, an EIN or a social security number. And then the box right here, you may want to track them for 1099 purposes. And we'll get into how that works here in just a few minutes. But that there's a wide variety of reasons why 1099s are sent. The most common are probably rent, if you're paying rent expenses, contract labor, and any kind of legal fees are just a few of the items that 1099s are required for. Scrolling down, if the vendor has any payment terms, you can put those in here. Not necessarily required, but it can be useful information to you. And the default expense category, I recommend using this, especially if your vendor is always being charged to the same account. So in this case, if we were saying that utilities is the account that we want this vendor to go to, we would just select utilities here, and then we can save. Now, just because we've put utilities in there as our default account, that doesn't mean that you can't change it, and you can make changes when you're entering information. The next step is to I'm going to start off with how to enter bills. Enter bills, for example, we'll go with the vendor that we just set up, Small Biz Kathy. We have our bill date. We have a due date. Let's say that we want it to be due on, let's say, a month from now. So we'll put our due date in as June 10th. If there's an invoice number, it's always helpful to key in the invoice number, and especially with vendors that you do a lot of business with, that just makes it easier to keep track of what you've paid for. And when you send the vendor a check, that bill number will show up on their check stub, and that makes it easy for them to know what you've paid for. Under category details, you can see right here our default category was utilities. Again, if you want to change this, let's say that we don't want it to charge just a general utilities account. We're going to do the telephone account. You can make the change here, and then we'll just say we're paying Kathy. The amount, just put in the amount of the invoice. And the billable feature, not a lot of our clients use this feature, but this is where you would, if you're keeping track of billable expenses, you would check the box here as being billable. And if you do check the box as being billable, then you'll want to select a customer as to what customer is that invoice or product being used for. As we scroll on down, another feature that I really like especially when it comes to vendors, is attachments. And under this attachment, you can scan in a copy of your invoice, either as a PDF or a JPEG picture, and you can attach that here so that if you or anybody else that has access to your file wants to know what you paid for, they can look at the invoice or a picture of receipt right here and have instant access. It also serves as a rather inexpensive filing cabinet, and that this is a feature that several of our clients use, and I think it's also one of the more overlooked features of QuickBooks Online, because you do have to scroll to the bottom. For now, I'm just going to save and close this invoice. We'll go and take a look at our accounts payable aging report really quickly. And we're going to see that Small Biz Kathy is on here and it's current. Let's say that in the future that I didn't pay on time. And you can see that if I was to run this report as of the end of July, that now Small Biz Kathy is 30 to 60 days, past due. So that's how invoices will show up on your accounts payable aging summary. Once we've got bills in, the next step is paying for those bills. And so the majority of folks that pay bills, they do it by check. And again, I really like this plus sign, the new. It gives you access to just about everything that you can do in QuickBooks Online. And so I clicked the plus sign and said pay bills. So this is giving us a list of all of our bills that are currently outstanding. And up here at the top, it's asking us, how do we want to pay these bills? I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to say checking. Once we select the checking amount, it shows us how much we have in our checking account. And it's asking us what check number do we want to start with. And if you're printing multiple checks, it's a good idea to double check which check number you're starting with. To pay the bills, you just select the bills that you want to pay, and if you want, for whatever reason, if you wanted to change the amount that you're paying on those bills, you can make the changes here. Most of the time, we're not going to, and in order to print a check, we're going to do the drop down arrow and tell it to save and print. And what that will do is that will print set our checks up to print in a PDF format, and you can print your checks out and mail them from here. Schedule payments online. QuickBooks Online, it has introduced a new feature to where you can make payments online. I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about the feature right now, and I don't know how much the feature costs, but that is certainly an option. And in this day and time, it may be preferable to sending checks. That's really going to be a personal preference for you. To enter checks, again, we're going to go to the plus sign and select check. A lot of folks don't use the accounts payable function, and that's really going to be a personal preference for each of you. If you don't want to use the accounts payable function, you can come straight to the check writing. And in this screen, we're going to select our vendor. If we have all the correct information, it will show up here. We can put our own information in here if we need to edit it. Select the category, put in the description and the amount. Again, select whether that customer is a billable, is this a billable expense or not? If it is, check the box and select the customer. Scroll down. Again, if you if you want to use the attachment feature, again, I really like the attachment feature, but that is certainly up to you. To print the check, you would then on the very bottom print check, and that will take you through the printing process. Everything will be recorded into your check register and your general ledger. One item that the next item I want to cover is expenses. When we hit the new button under vendors, we have the ability to record an expense. This might be preferable. It's a little faster way than printing the check of recording an entry. Again, you select who you're paying and all of the other. You can select under payment method how you've paid, whether it's by cash, check, credit card, EFT, and then select the category and the amount, and save and close. The expenses is a little faster way of recording transactions that may not have been paid by check, or that you don't want to use the check writing process. It's a good way of recording debit card transactions. And when you use this expense feature, it automatically records it to either your checking account, savings account, credit card account, depending on what account you're recording the expense on. And it automatically updates everything for you. One of the some of the items that we see that are errors, or I won't really say problems, but errors that are made using this expense function. It is possible to record an expense without selecting a payee. I can't stress strong enough that you always have a payee or a vendor any time that you have the ability to enter that information. The other item that's come to our attention, we think it's a flaw within the QuickBooks program. We don't really understand why, but in recording expenses or bills, and if you're tracking those expenses for 1099 purposes, then under the category details, you can only charge one account per transaction. We have found many instances in which if you were to charge or credit multiple line items in a transaction, that not all of those items appear within the 1099 feature. So that is just something to be aware of when you're getting ready to prepare your 1099s. You may find that you've paid a vendor a certain amount of money, but when you go to print the 1099, it appears that the 1099 is going to be for less than what you have paid for. That is one item that you may find could be one of the reasons that what you're expecting the 1099 to be and what the 1099 wants to print for are different. similar to the accounts receivable, sometimes vendors issue you credits. And so under the plus sign and under vendors, vendor credit, we'll say perhaps Kathy charged us a little too much, and we're going to say that she's giving us a refund for $200, and we'll save and close that. And now we see under our accounts payable aging summary, our invoice that started out as $1,000 is now $800. Similar to other QuickBooks reports, anytime that you see amounts here, when you hover over those amounts and they're underlined, that means that you have the ability to dive in. So if I want to dive in here, I can see that here's my detail. So here we can see that my original invoice was $1,000. We had a $200 credit, and that takes us down to $800. So similar to our accounts receivable, anytime you see amounts that have the ability to underline will take you a little deeper. Now, if we're inside of an invoice, then when we click on the amount column, it will bring up the bill or the transaction that was entered. And so you can make any changes here that you need to, and you can save it or save and close or save and new. If you're not wanting to do any updates, the upper right hand corner, you can just X out and it takes you straight back to the transaction that you were looking at. And taking a look at our $1,000 invoice that we created for small biz Kathy, another feature that QuickBooks has is the ability to make transactions recurring. So say that for small biz Kathy, and instead of utilities, let's say that we want to, it's our monthly rent. What we can do is we can choose to make this a recurring. And so what I did was on the bottom here of our transaction, I've marked it, I've clicked on the button to make it recurring. So under the recurring, this allows me to either schedule, make it a reminder, or to unscheduled means that you would have to tell it to trigger. If we want to schedule this invoice, I may say that I wanted to create the invoice 5 days before it's due, and we're going to say that it's due monthly, and we're going to say it's due on the I'll say the last day of let's say it's due the last Monday of each month, and we're going to start it on May 30th with no end date. When I save this template, what this will do is this will automatically generate this invoice 5 days before the due date each month. And so that is a very nice feature. If you have expenses or items that you're paying that are recurring, rent expenses, loan payments, if you know that if you have any other kind of expenses that are that never change amounts, using that make recurring feature is a very handy feature. If you ever want to find those recurring payments, or if you want to make changes or to edit those payments, the gear icon, as we call it, up in the upper right-hand corner, you would select that gear icon, and under list, it's going to appear under recurring transactions. So we'll just take a quick look, and we can see that under our sample company here that they have 3 recurring transactions. Small Biz Kathy is the one that we just created, and the telephone bill and the monthly lease are the expenses that are set up in our sample client. To edit, you simply check the edit button, and then you can make any changes that you want to. Maybe you want it scheduled a little more in advance, or maybe a little less in advance. The dates that you can make changes to the dates. You can make changes to the transaction that you want to the account that you want to charge, and you can save that template, and it takes us back to our recurring transactions. The little drop down arrow next to the edit button, that gives us the option to use the transaction, to duplicate it, or to delete it, pause or skip to the next dates. Those are other features, but typically the most common feature that you're probably going to use from here is to either use or delete. And if you use the delete feature, that will delete all future occurrences of the transaction. It will not affect any transactions that have already been posted. So if you have a concern there about a fear of deleting anything, under this screen, the deleting recurring transactions again will only delete future instances of those transactions. If maybe we're going on vacation and we're not going to be around to write the check, we can simply tell it to use the transaction, and it will pop up just as we had it entered, and then we can save and close this, and then go to our check writing process. Those are, I think I might have gone a little faster than normal in the past. Under some other features regarding vendors and payments, under vendors, you can search for a vendor. So if I want to type in small, we can see that Small Biz Kathy pops up for us to choose from, and that may be a little faster than having to scroll through the invoice or through all of the vendors. We can click on a vendor, and this looks very similar to accounts receivable customers. This allows us to see the what invoices or bills are outstanding, and whether we want to pay any bills or not. Here we can use the filter feature, and we can say we just want to see what's open, and this will hide a lot of the history that's there. Similar to accounts payable or accounts receivable, we have batch actions. And so while this doesn't give us the ability to really batch anything, if you had more than one transaction here, this gives us the ability to change, in this case, categories or accounts that we want to charge. So if you have a vendor that you had accidentally charged the wrong account to, this gives you the ability to make multiple changes at one time. We've got the edit feature here. You can edit anything in here that you want to. We can see that they are tracking this vendor by for 1099 purposes, and this is a good place to make changes to your vendors. Your vendor may have moved, they may have changed their mailing address. Perhaps they want the check written in a different name. So you can make all those changes under that edit function. Other things that you can do while you're under vendors, you can, why I don't necessarily recommend this, you do have the ability to, for bills that you've entered, you can come in and say, you charged the wrong account, you want this to go to a different account. You can make that change here. And QuickBooks Online will save that for you. Those are the pretty much the nuts and bolts of vendors and the most used features of vendors. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take a stab at answering those. Otherwise, I know this may be a little shorter session than the previous ones, but
I have a question.
Sure.
Where you were talking about doing the invoices and everything, where we're nonprofit and stuff, I really like what you were talking about, that you could do a PDF with your invoice, that you could have it all together. Is that like when you're on the invoice, Danny, do you just scan in your invoice to attach it to that at that time?
Yep, I sure do. Or we can go into this invoice right here, and we can, if you scan the invoice in, you just go to, well, it's not show existing, but you click on the attachments, and that pops up to for you to go find wherever you had saved the invoice, and you can
like
attach
if you put it in your scans or something, so you can find it there.
Yes.
And I've got another question, but this might not be pertaining to this, but where we have what we send out are for members for the chamber and everything. And my question is, we're finding some that are delinquent, but we can't really resend them out. It's like they've been closed. So I was going to ask you, what do we need to do? Do we need to close that transaction and then rebill?
Sure. So this is this is going to be under more receivables and customers, and so we'll take a look at Amy's Bird Sanctuary here for a minute, and I'm going to do a quick filter just to see what she has open. And so what I would do is right here, in this case, the original invoice was $459. Now she's got $239 open. I think the easiest thing to do would be to issue a credit memo.
Okay.
And I have, we'll just put it in here, and I'm going to change it to where we do a credit for the whole amount. And so you can see that it has zero, it has closed the open account. It's taken the balance back to zero. And then if you need to create a new invoice, you can create a new invoice there.
Okay. And then also when we talk about vendors, and we found some vendors that have changed their name or something like that. Are we still able to edit those?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's say Bob's Burger Joint. we can go in here and we can change the name to Nita's Burger Joint,
Okay.
and just save, and the name's been changed.
Well, thank you.
And all of the history that was there will still be here.
That's great. I just want to say thank you, because we use Spiegler Blevins for the chamber account and everything, and they are so good to help us in every area. I know sometimes I have to call Danny numerous times, and they're always so good to help us and Beth. So thank you, Danny, for all you do.
No problem. Happy to help.
Danny, I've got a question.
Sure.
I know that there's probably areas that people miss up the most. Could you share what those are and how to avoid? Because we're all human.
Yeah, I think when it comes to vendors, I think the three most common errors that I see are not collecting a W-9 or tax ID information to track for 1099 purposes up front. Putting in expenses with blank vendors, with no name. So when you go to print reports and you find that you've paid, say, Nita's Burger Joint, and you've ate there 5 times last month, but there's only one transaction showing up under that vendor, it's probably because you didn't key in the vendor name, when you recorded the expense. And I think probably the next most common item is, if you'll recall back on our first session of new knowledge that I did, is using the when we go into the banking and we're wanting to accept some of these transactions. So let's say that this rental, let's say that we wanted to go to rent, and now I add the transaction. That transaction is now recorded into our checkbook, but then I go in and I record an expense or a check for the same exact item. That is probably the most common error that we find is that expenses have been duplicated. And because folks are using both the bank import feature, and then they're also keying the transaction in. Got another question here. If you have a bill that has more than one amount, under category. So the question is, if you have a bill that has more than one amount on it, but each amount on the invoice is for the same category, would you recommend listing each amount on a separate line, or would you use the total amount on one line? So what I would say there is, if you if it's not a billable expense that you're going to bill a customer for, then I would recommend just using a single total when you're keying the amount in. If you had if you had expenses that need to go to multiple accounts, then you would want to use multiple lines. But just know that if that's the case, that you may have some issues on the 1099 at the end of the year. But if they're not a 1099 vendor, then you don't have any worries there.
Danny, I would assume it goes without saying, but sometimes you do have to say it, is that whoever the business is that's using it, whoever you select, or the people that have access to posting and doing all this, should be well trained, because you can just miss up in one thing and it throws off a whole lot. The beauty about QuickBooks is it's really easy to use, and it's also really easy to make mistakes. And
and even as trained accountants, I make my fair share of mistakes, but luckily QuickBooks gives us the tools to be able to correct those mistakes without a whole lot of trouble.
Yeah, and the owner of the account, it's, the business owner, it's prudent, obviously, for them to regularly go check things just to make sure, not assume that everything is correct. Stay on top of things.
Absolutely. Sometimes doing this type of work on a daily basis may be a little cumbersome, but at least once a week, I would recommend at least once a week that you're updating your bank accounts and just reviewing your accounts receivable aging and accounts payable aging. Those are all tools that QuickBooks provides you to assist you in managing your business.
I'm not a QuickBooks user yet, but just a question: when a payment comes in, if it's been processed through credit card, do you receive a notification from your bank that amount was received into your account, or how do you keep up with that?
So if you have your bank account synced with QuickBooks, you would click on, in this case, on the checking account. And if the account is synced, then that deposit, right here, we'll take a look at this deposit for a minute. For example, this could be a credit card deposit. And in this case, that QuickBooks is attempting to match that to a transaction that you've already got recorded. But I'm just trying to look through here real quick to see if they have any. In this sample client, they don't have any deposits coming in. Nope. I'm sorry, they do. So right here on this example is it could have been a credit card deposit or some other deposit that was made in the bank. And right here, it's asking you to identify the vendor or customer that it's coming from. And then you click add, and then that will add it to your bank account in QuickBooks Online. But these are all items that in this sample company have came in on the bank feed that have not been recorded into the books yet.
And Danny, can you customize when you receive a reminder, or let's say you've got a customer that has historically been slow in paying their bills, and you've got a lot of accounts open right here, and it's tough to remember them all, but can you do a custom flagged a reminder that, okay, their payment is due on such and such date, that you can go and check it?
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure that QuickBooks offers any flags other than using the accounts receivable aging. That's probably going to be your fastest flag. I'm not sure if QuickBooks does any auto reminders of, hey, Red Rock Diner has significantly past due.
Okay.
I think you would primarily want to use the accounts receivable aging summary to I would say that anything in 60 plus, 60 and 91 and over, that those are going to be my significantly past due customers.
Gotcha. I'd say it'd be a good habit, just either the end of the day or the first thing in the morning, to kind of take a quick look and see, because you may need to make some calls or do something the next day to
Right.
shake the bushes a little bit to get people to remember, oh yeah, you owe me.
Right. And one thing that QuickBooks also gives you the ability to do, say in this case, we've got the customer email. That this gives us the ability to save and send the invoice. And if it's already been sent once, I believe it gives you the ability to resend it. And I can't put my finger on it fast enough right now to show you in this example, but I do know that I think it's in customers. Let's see, that was red. In here, when you click on the invoice, if you've sent it, I believe it either shows up here near the top, or it may be down here near the bottom. It will give you a history of the actions that you've taken on that invoice. It'll tell you what date you sent the invoice. If you've resent the invoice, it'll tell you that it's been, what date it was resent on, and so that can be useful information in helping manage your business.
If the invoice is sent by electronically, either by email or something, do you have will it show you if the person has read it, opened it?
I don't know the answer to that question. I suspect probably not.
Well, I can say when we send out our invoices, it does show when everyone looks at it and when it was opened, and each time that it's opened, which is really good for us when we have people that say, I never received it or something like that, and trying to figure out what the problem is. So
and that's exactly
very helpful to us.
That's exactly what I was trying to avoid. If you have that documentation, it's hard to fight. When there's documentation that you opened it not once, but you opened it on this date and this date. So you can't say that you didn't know it. But yeah, there's another one, Danny, from Jean. On the dashboard, you can see what invoices are overdue, and there is a drop down that you can resend it.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
that status tells you, which is great.
And see, our problem is when we've tried that to resend, if it's been several months or something, it'll say that we need a passcode to do that. And I was thinking maybe that's after maybe Beth, if it's the end of December or something like that.
As accountants, we like to, there's a feature that allows us to close the period. And that's just so that you're not able to make any changes. And that's just a tool that the accountants use. But I would say that a lot of folks probably don't, may not be using that feature. And if they're not using that feature, then they won't run into that. But
for us, you still think that doing the credit memo and reissue and the invoice would be our best bet?
I would think so. You can, the other item or the other thing. Well, it's not payables. The other option is you can open up the invoice. And, I believe you can, you could print it, and you can either print it to a PDF or print it and scan it in, and then send in an attachment from your email.
That's nice to know.
I think that sometimes while QuickBooks gives us the ability to email invoices, I'm not 100% certain that they all get through through the spam filters.
Sure. And that's what we're finding, that, different people's change jobs and everything, or emails have changed. So that's what we're trying to make sure that we're up to date on.
So you figured out my plan. Let's just keep changing my emails. Okay.
I know where you live.
Well, if there's no other questions, Danny,
No
I just
problem.
want to thank you again for your time and for sharing your expertise. And thanks to everyone that joined us today. I just want to remind you to make plans to join us for the next QuickBooks session, which will be the final one on June the 1st. And I know it would probably help Danny if you have questions that you would like for him to focus on at our next session. Send that in an email to us, and we will make sure we get those answered at the next session. So again, today's session was recorded. It will be available on the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator's Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel, New Knowledge. You can go there and find all the other ones there. If you enjoyed this session and you received the link, please share that with others that could gain and learn from Danny's expertise. So thanks again. Wishing everyone a great rest of your week. And Danny, thanks again. I appreciate it.
No problem. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.